So we were dealing with the topic of bridging the compute and financial divide. So these are really two major different dichotomies. But the first premise that we were dealing with was, if we're addressing the question in its current state of demand for compute and finance, we'll never be able to meet it because countries in the south, countries in developing spaces, are not able to actually meet these financing gaps because they themselves are in major economic indebtedness. So I think there was a need to reframe the question. And the way we looked at it was, okay, so in other words, there's no bridging this gap, but we could look at different financing models that would suit the situation. And one of the things we looked at is, how do we think about this financing gap at this point in time? What is the need? What is the demand for infrastructure? Do we have the same demand for infrastructure as the rest of the world has? And do we have it now? Is it a time factor? So these were the things and the questions we entertained. So with that in mind, the first point that came up was, is it necessary to actually, or is it really needed at this point in time to actually think about infrastructure as it is right now in its current form and state, as it's being applied for AI? So that was the main question. At this point in time also, it was critical to think of a different model whereby could countries in the south put together a shared mechanism for sharing infrastructure so that they can actually bridge the computing power. So that would somehow reduce the finance and bring about collaboration, because no country can actually build its own. That was the message. Now, but then again, it's also critical to think about what is the infrastructure demand? What is the infrastructure demand and what is the financing demand? Have countries clearly identified, or are we using the model already used in the global north to actually define the financing infrastructure gap for the south? So we need to clearly define the demand as we stand. And having said so, there are multiple models, one being the shared model, but the other one is really providing incentives for the private sector. And this should not be construed as abdicating the power of the public sector to create this infrastructure in finance, but rather creating the enabling environments for the private sector to actually invest, engage in. And there are many, many more other models to do this. One of them would be, now, there's a lot of wealth and capability in data. So it's a matter of really using this data in exchange for compute power, availing this data for potentially exchanging it for compute power. So that's a potential to actually consider. But having said so, continually creating this enabling environment for the private sector to invest in terms of policy support, in terms of capacity, has actually been brought up. In case I have forgotten anything, Alison, would you like to come in? Okay. Anybody else? Thank you.